granddaughter wouldn't let go of my hand at the 4th of July cookout. That sounds sweet when I write it like that. Grandchildren hold your hand all the time. They pull you toward the dessert table or drag you over to see a firefly they caught in a jar. But Lily wasn't doing any of that. She was 7 years old, standing beside me near the back fence while everyone else laughed and chased each other across the yard, and she was holding my hand with both of hers, pressed against my side like she was trying to disappear into me. "You doing okay, Bug?" I asked her. She didn't answer right away. She just looked out at the yard, watching her father toss a football with my son-in-law's brother, watching him the way a rabbit watches something it doesn't have a name for yet. "I don't want to go home tonight," she said finally. I figured she was tired. I figured she wanted to sleep over the way she sometimes did, sprawled across the pull-out couch in my spare room, with the fan going and a glass of water on the nightstand. I squeezed her hand and told her I'd talk to her mum. What I didn't know was that those 6 words were going to change everything. I'm a retired high school history teacher, 31 years in the classroom in Columbus, Ohio, and I thought I'd learned to read people pretty well. My wife passed 8 years ago, ovarian cancer, fast and merciless, and since then I've made myself useful in the way that widowed grandfathers do. I drove Lily to soccer practice on Wednesdays. I fixed the leaking faucet in my daughter's bathroom. I showed up. That was my whole job. My daughter's name is Nora. She married a man named Grant when she was 26, and I tried my best to love him the way you love family, the way you give someone the benefit of every doubt, because your child chose them and you trust your child. Grant had a good job in logistics, nice clothes, a firm handshake. He coached Lily's soccer team for 1 season. On the surface, everything looked exactly the way it was supposed to look. But there had been things. Small things I'd filed away and tried not to examine too closely. The way Lily stopped talking about her weekends when she was around 5. The way she'd developed this habit of pulling at her sleeves even in warm weather. The way she'd once asked me, out of nowhere in the car on the way to soccer, whether God could hear you if you only thought something and didn't say it out loud. I told her yes. She nodded and looked back out the window and never explained why she asked. I had filed those things away. I am not proud of that. The night of the 4th of July, I talked to Nora and she said Lily could stay over. I noticed something cross Grant's face when Nora told him, a tightening quick and controlled, but he smiled and kissed Lily on the top of her head and said, "Have fun, Bug." He called her Bug too. I'd taught him that. That night, after Lily had brushed her teeth and I tucked her in and we'd read 2 chapters of the book she was working through, she asked me to leave the lamp on. "The hall light's not enough." She shook her head. "You want to tell me why?" She pulled the blanket up to her chin. "The dark is where bad things happen," she said, not like she was scared, like she was stating a fact she'd memorized. I sat down on the edge of the bed. "What kind of bad things, Lily?" She looked at the ceiling for a long time. I waited. I have always believed that silence is something you offer a child, not something you fill. "Daddy takes me to the garage at night," she said. "He says it's our special time, but it doesn't feel special." She paused. "It hurts." The room didn't tilt. It just went very, very quiet. "When you say it hurts," I said slowly, carefully, the way I used to talk to a student I knew was about to cry, "do you mean your body hurts?" She nodded once, small and precise. "Does your mum know? Daddy says if I tell Mum, she'll be so sad she'll get sick and die." She said it without drama, completely flat, the way children repeat things they've been taught, like Grandma did. And there it was, he had used my wife. He had used my wife's death to keep a 7-year-old silent. I held it together. That is the only way I can describe it. I held everything inside a tight, sealed space in my chest, and I told Lily that she had done nothing wrong, that I believed her, that I was going to make sure she was safe. I left the lamp on. I sat in the hallway outside her door until I heard her breathing slow. Then I went to the kitchen and I gripped the edge of the counter and I stood there for a while. I'm a grandfather. I'm 63 years old and I taught other people's children for 3 decades. And I didn't see this happening to my own grandchild in my own family. That thought moved through me like a current, and I let it, because I knew I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. I called Nora at 11:30 that night. She didn't believe me, not at first. That's the thing nobody tells you. The mother doesn't always believe you at first, and it doesn't mean she's a bad person. It means she's been living inside a reality that was carefully constructed to keep her from seeing. She started crying, then she got angry, then she went quiet in a way that scared me more than the crying. She said Grant would never. She said Lily had a big imagination. She said I was. And I understood why she said this. I was maybe reading into things because I'd never fully trusted Grant. Nora, I said, I need you to listen to me, not as someone who married him, as Lily's mother. She didn't say anything for a long time. She told me it hurts, I said. She told me he takes her to the garage at night. She used the phrase special time. Those are not words a 7-year-old invents. I heard her breathing change. I need you to come here tonight, I said. I need Lily to stay here. Don't go home first. Come straight here. She came. She arrived at my house at midnight and she sat at my kitchen table and she looked like someone had removed something load-bearing from inside her. I made coffee she didn't drink. We talked until 3 in the morning. By the time the sun came up, she had made the call. The Franklin County Children's Services office opened at 8 a.m. on a Monday. Nora called them first, and they transferred her to a detective in the Crimes Against Children unit. His name was Detective Harmon, a quiet, methodical man who sounded like he had heard everything and was still, somehow, choosing to keep showing up. He came to my house that afternoon with a female colleague who introduced herself as a forensic interviewer. They spoke with Lily in my living room for almost an hour. I was asked to wait in the kitchen. I sat at that table and I looked at the coffee rings from the night before and I thought about the last 30 years, about every child I'd ever taught, about whether I'd missed signs in other places I'd never looked. When the interviewer came out, her face told me something before she said a word. She disclosed clearly, Detective Harmon told me. Her language and her account are consistent with what we see in genuine disclosures from children her age. We're going to move forward. They arrested Grant at his office that Wednesday. He was a logistics manager for a distribution company in Worthington, the kind of suburb where people have good lawns and wave to each other in the driveway, where nothing like this is supposed to happen. According to Harmon, Grant had been almost eerily calm when they put him in cuffs. He said he wanted his attorney and nothing else. Nora filed for emergency protective custody the same day. The attorney at the family law clinic downtown was a woman about Nora's age who moved very fast and talked very straight, which is what Nora needed. The next morning, Lily woke up in my spare room and asked if she was going to have to go back to that house, and I told her no. She said okay and asked if we had waffles. Children do that. They hold the most enormous things and then ask about waffles. I didn't know whether to laugh or step outside and put my hand over my mouth. I made the waffles. The investigation took 4 months. What came out during that time was worse than I'd let myself imagine, and I had already imagined some very bad things. There was a memory card. There were files on a laptop that had been stored in a locked box in the garage. The garage. The place he told her was for their special time. I do not have the words for what I felt when Harmon told me that. Some feelings are too large for language, and you just have to carry them. The charges were extensive, multiple counts. The DA's office told Nora they had more than enough. What I wasn't prepared for was the effect on my daughter. Nora had been with this man for 11 years. 11 years of shared dinners and arguments about money and vacations and a mortgage and a child and a dog. Everything she thought was real had been a performance, a surface over something she was never meant to see. She went through a period of about 6 weeks where she barely functioned. She would get Lily to school, come back to my house and sit. Sometimes she'd talk. Sometimes she'd just sit. I didn't push her. I had learned enough about grief from losing her mother to know that you cannot schedule someone else's healing. I worried about what it was doing to Lily, watching her mother come apart. Dr. Arnett, the child psychologist the Family Advocacy Center assigned to Lily, said that as long as Lily felt safe and had one stable adult anchor, she would be able to process this. I appointed myself that anchor. It wasn't a decision I made consciously, it was just the only thing I knew how to do. Lily had nightmares. She had days where she'd be fine, genuinely fine, running around the backyard and arguing with me about what to have for dinner. And then something would happen. A car door slamming, the lights going off suddenly, a man laughing too loud from somewhere down the street, and she'd be somewhere else entirely, in a place I couldn't follow her. Dr. Arnett was patient and smart, and she explained things to me in language I could use. She said the body keeps a record of what happens to it, and that Lily's nervous system had been trained to expect danger. That unwiring takes time and consistency and a whole lot of ordinary days. She said ordinary days were medicine. I tried to give Lily ordinary days. We had a routine: school, then my house, then homework at the kitchen table while I made dinner. Thursdays we watched nature documentaries. Saturdays we went to the farmer's market on High Street, and she picked out what she wanted, and I let her carry the bag. Small things. Repeated things. The architecture of safety. Meanwhile, the case moved forward. Nora had to testify before the grand jury. Lily was interviewed again, this time by a specialist from the Child Advocacy Center, who was trained specifically in working with young victims. I was told later that Lily's second disclosure was even clearer than the first, that she had used words in that interview that no 7-year-old should know the meaning of, words that confirmed everything. Grant's defense attorney tried several angles. He argued the evidence had been mishandled. He brought in an expert who questioned the reliability of child testimony. He tried to suggest that Lily had been coached, that my daughter and I had planted these ideas. The prosecution countered with forensic evidence from the laptop and the memory card that could not be explained away by coaching. They brought in their own expert, a clinical psychologist from OSU, who had testified in over 200 abuse cases, who explained in plain language exactly what the forensic interview data showed. Lily had to testify. I was outside the courtroom during that part. Nora held my hand and I held hers, and neither of us said anything. We just sat there in those hard plastic chairs in the hallway of the Franklin County Courthouse and waited. She was in there for 40 minutes. When the door opened and the child advocacy specialist brought her out, she looked small and pale, but she looked like herself. She looked right at me and she said, "I told the truth, Grandpa. I know you did, Bug." Is that enough? It's more than enough. The jury came back after 3 days. I was in the courtroom for the verdict. I was sitting behind Nora, close enough to put my hand on her shoulder. When the jury foreperson stood up and said guilty on the first count, Nora's whole body went forward like something had left it. I kept my hand on her shoulder. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 6 counts in total. Grant stood and received each one with that same controlled stillness he'd had the day they arrested him. His lawyer put a hand on his arm at one point. Grant didn't move. He just stared ahead. I'd known this man for 11 years, and I realized in that moment I had never known him at all. At sentencing, the judge said things I'm not going to repeat here because they're not mine to repeat. What I will say is that the sentence was 38 years. With mandatory minimums on the child sexual abuse charges, he would not be eligible for parole for at least 25. The prosecutor told us afterward that in all likelihood he would die in prison. I do not feel the satisfaction about that I thought I would. What I feel is more complicated. A hollowness where the anger used to be, a grief that doesn't quite have a name, because the person I'm grieving is a person who never actually existed. Nora moved in with me that fall. It was supposed to be temporary, and then we stopped calling it temporary, and now it just is what it is. She got a part-time job at a non-profit that does financial counseling for low-income families. She's back in therapy. Some weeks are hard, but I watch her with Lily and I see the thread between them, thinned and frayed and still holding, and I think it's going to be okay. I don't mean okay like nothing happened. I mean okay like they're going to make it. Lily started 3rd grade in September. Her teacher, Mrs. Boppen Whitmore, called me in October to tell me that Lily had done something remarkable for their class sharing project. Instead of bringing in a toy or a photo like most of the other kids, she brought in a drawing she'd made over the summer. It was a picture of 2 houses, side by side. One was dark, with closed curtains and a small figure standing alone outside. One was bright, with an open door and people inside and a dog on the porch. We don't actually have a dog, but Lily has been making a sustained argument for one. Between the 2 houses she'd drawn a path, and on the path she'd drawn a little girl, and at the end of the path there was an old man with his hand out. Mrs. Whitmore said the class had been completely silent. I keep the drawing on the refrigerator. There are things I go back to, late at night when the house is quiet and I can't stop my mind from running over the timeline. I go back to every moment I noticed something and told myself it wasn't my place. The sleeve she pulled down in August. The question about God in the car. The July 4th cookout 6 months before that, when she'd asked to sit in my lap during the fireworks, even though she was getting too old for it, and I just assumed she was startled by the noise. I think she was asking me something I didn't have the language to hear yet. Dr. Mouse, Arnett tells me, she tells me often, because she knows I need to hear it. That abuse by a primary caregiver operates inside a system of concealment that is specifically designed to prevent detection. That I am not trained as a forensic interviewer, that the fact that I heard Lily that night at all, the fact that I created enough safety for her to speak, is something, that it matters. I know she's right. I'm working on believing it. What I want people to understand, if you're still reading this, if you're a grandparent or an aunt or a neighbor or a coach, is that the signs look like other things. A child who flinches looks like a sensitive child. A child who doesn't want to go home looks like a child who loves sleepovers. A child who asks about God in the car looks like a child who is curious about the world. The signs are real, but they are wrapped inside normal-looking behavior, and the people who commit these acts are counting on you to see the wrapper instead of what's inside. Trust what you feel. Not paranoia, not assumption, but the thing that sits in your chest after a child says something and won't leave. That thing is worth listening to. If a child tells you something, believe them first. You can doubt, you can investigate, you can get it wrong. But believe first. The cost of believing a false disclosure is nowhere near the cost of dismissing a true one. I've turned that math over 1,000 times, and it always comes out the same. Call someone. In Ohio, the statewide child abuse hotline is open 24 hours a day. If you're not in Ohio, your state has one. You don't have to be certain. You don't have to have proof. You have to have a concern. That's it. That's enough. Last month, Lily turned 8. We had a small party, just family, a few kids from her class. Mrs. Buds Whitmore, who has become something of a fixture. We did a craft table and a scavenger hunt in the backyard. At the end of the night, after the other kids had gone home and Lily was cleaning up glitter from the kitchen table with the focused seriousness she brings to everything, she stopped and looked up at me. "Grandpa," she said, "I'm glad you believe me." I sat down across from her. "I'm glad you told me." She went back to cleaning up the glitter. "Do you think other kids have grandpas like you?" "I hope so," I said. "I really hope so." She nodded, like that settled something, and went back to work. I watched her under that kitchen light, This resilient, strange, funny kid who draws houses with open doors and argues about dogs and asks whether God can hear you when you only think something. And I thought about all the children who don't have someone who sits in the hallway with the lamp on. All the ones whose adults looked at the wrapper and kept walking. All the ones still waiting for someone to hear them through the silence. If that's you reading this, if you know a child who might be waiting, please don't wait for certainty. Certainty comes after. First comes the decision to look, really look, at what's in front of you. That decision might be the most important one you ever make. I keep Lily's drawing on the refrigerator. Not because I need reminding of what happened, I don't think I'll ever forget a single night of it, but because of what it shows. 2 houses, a dark one and a bright one, a little girl walking the path between them, an old man at the end with his hand out. She drew me with my hand out. That's the part that gets me every time. I think about the choices I almost made, the moments I almost looked away. The July 4th cookout before the one where she finally told me, when she sat in my lap during the fireworks and I thought she was just startled by the noise. She wasn't startled by the noise. She was asking me something I didn't have the ears to hear yet. And because I didn't hear it, she had to carry it alone for another year. That's the weight I live with now, not as punishment, but as a reminder that paying attention to the people we love is not a passive act. It takes something from you. It asks you to slow down, look closer, and be willing to see what you don't want to see. What Grant did, the choices he made night after night in that garage, those choices produced a result that was as predictable as any law of cause and effect. He built something hidden, and hidden things do not stay hidden forever. The walls he built around Lily's silence were the same walls that eventually collapsed and buried him. He had calculated everything except for one thing. A 7-year-old who found one safe person and decided for one quiet moment to tell the truth. That's the thing about courage. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come in full armor with a war cry. Lily's courage was 6 words spoken in the near dark of my spare room with the lamp on. The garage hurts me. That's all it took. 6 words from a child who had been told over and over that telling would destroy everything, and who told anyway. I'm 63 years old, and I have not always been the bravest person in the room. I stayed quiet about things I should have questioned earlier in my life. I gave benefit of the doubt when I should have asked harder questions. When I look back at the man I was before that July night, I see someone who confused keeping the peace with doing right. Those are not the same thing. I know that now in a way I didn't before. What this whole experience taught me, through Lily, through Nora, through the long months of courtrooms and therapy appointments and ordinary Thursdays watching nature documentaries, is that doing right by someone requires 3 things working together. It requires the moral backbone to act even when acting is uncomfortable, even when it costs you something real. It requires the clarity of mind to read what's in front of you without letting wishful thinking fog the picture. And it requires the endurance to stay in it long past the moment of crisis, through the nightmares and the setbacks and the days when progress feels invisible. You don't save a child in a single night. You save them slowly, day after day, in the accumulation of ordinary things done with care. Nora is getting stronger. Lily turned 8 last month, and she argued with me about getting a dog for the better part of a birthday party. She's still in therapy. She still has hard days. But she laughs now, really laughs, the kind that's bigger than she can contain. And every time I hear it, I think, this is what we were protecting. This right here. If you're a grandparent, a neighbor, a teacher, anyone, and something a child says sits in your chest and won't leave, listen to that. That feeling is not nothing. It might be the most important thing you ever pay attention to.